Hello, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls. This is On the Move, the show that attempts to get you guys to stand up for your rights. I'm Mack Worley III. This is On the Move. I'm really excited about today's show. We've got a lot of stuff on the agenda. I'm pretty excited about it. First and foremost, today is December 21st, 2014. Today's show is titled Cuba, Public Servants Gone Wild. And we have a special guest coming on the show. His name is Jules Czudar. He's going to be talking about his experience. We'll get to that in a second. The very beginning of today's show, as usual, we have a lot on the menu, a lot for you guys to digest. We're going to be doing the Weekly Defender. I try to do this as much as possible. Sometimes we get a little busy and we're not able to cover it. But this week we're going to start out first and foremost with the Weekly Defender. After that, around 5:15 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, that's 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, we're going to be joined by special guest, like I said, Jules Czudar. I'm really excited about this interview. He's going to discuss his epic 8-year battle that he has had where he continually sought to find his daughter. He was falsely accused. He was put in jail, prosecuted, and finally he prevailed. So I'm really excited to hear his story and introduce him to you guys. I think this is a really important topic, and I think you guys should get to know him. Anyway, in the second hour of today's show, we're going to talk about Obama's New Deal with Cuba. I also want to highlight some public officials that are running amok. They're operating outside the bounds of law or just being jerks. And there's a lot more on the menu. I have a ton of other stuff that I want to try to get to, lots of clips, a couple of articles I want to read. I'm not sure if we're going to have time for it all. But you don't want to miss today's episode. It's going to be really informative and entertaining. I think you guys are going to like it. So most importantly is communicating with you guys. This is the reason why I do the show. I enjoy the interaction with you guys more than anything. And as I say, this is your show just as much as it is my show. So with that said, if you guys want to join today's conversation, please feel free to give us a call. The number to the show is 619-924-0986. Again, that's 619-924-0986. Or you can email the show at talk@onthemoveshow.com. Any kind of topic that you have that you'd like to discuss is on the table. I'm really excited to hear from you guys. So light up our phone lines, MacPack. The lines are open. And also, I just want to give you guys another heads up here. We're doing something a little different now. Something a little different than we have in the past, and I'm doing it for a couple different reasons. First and foremost, it's awesome to be able to interact with you guys. So, being able to communicate with you guys is one of my number one priorities. That being said, we use Facebook a lot of the time. So Facebook is typically one of my main tools to reach you guys and to even let you guys know what's going on. I know a lot of you guys don't go to our website, by the way. That's OnTheMoveShow.com. But you can. Lots of information on there. But Facebook is a pretty useful tool. The only thing about Facebook that I have an issue with, several issues with, but the one in particular is that they have this kind of analytical filtering that based off of how many likes you get on a post or how many comments, how many times people will interact with you on Facebook, they will filter your stuff out. So you may think that you're blasting something out to all of your friends on Facebook by posting it on your timeline or something along those lines, but depending on who's clicking like, if you click like, you may see more of my stuff more often. But you clicking like may open it up to the filtering there to where someone else may see it. So what I'm doing now, I want to try to get around Facebook analytics a little bit here. And if you guys could help me, this would work out in our favor here. So we are now posting and having a pinned post on our Facebook page, facebook.com/OnTheMoveShow. So on that Facebook page itself, if you go to the very top of the page, the first post on there, it'll be the one that says Cuba Public Servants Gone Wild. It's the link for this event. But if you make any comments or anything like that, I'm monitoring it live here. So anything you say, I'm gonna see. I'm gonna respond. I'm gonna talk to you. This would be a great way for us to interact. But additionally, all of your posts will increase our analytical filtering, so it will get the message out to more people. I think that's really important. I really want to start doing this because the more people we can reach through Facebook, the better, and we'll build up our audience and community. And again, for those of you who listen to the show and you like the message that we talk about, first and foremost, I just want to say I really appreciate you guys. You guys are the reason why we do this, and it's appreciated. So, but helping spread the message, if you like what we're doing and you want to get people to know about it, this is a great way, because every post that you make will increase that analytical filter, and it may reach somebody else. So your effects or your actions actually do have an impact, and you can help spread the message. You can help make the podcast bigger. You can help us reach more people. This is how you can do it, on top of all the things that you guys normally do, which, by the way, MacPack, I appreciate you guys. You guys are out there sharing the show around, talking to your friends about it. You guys are really helping out a great deal, and I appreciate it. We want to get bigger. We want to be able to influence a little more and get the message out. Liberty, get people to stand up, actually educate people on what history we have gone through as a country, our actual history, and not a revisionist version of it. And additionally to that, teaching people what their individual rights are. It's sad. It is so sad that people do not know what their rights are. People don't know what the government can't do. And some people think that those rights are actually given to you by the government, that the government gave you these rights, and that these rights aren't innate. They're not self-evident. We all don't possess them at birth. Some people even believe that these rights are just American. These are only American rights, and they're given to us by the Constitution. That's what people think, and it's really sad. So getting this message out, having more people engage, having more people learn, get active, get out there, get on the move, that's what we're about. That's what I stand for, and I hope you guys do too. So if you guys have any comments, anything like that, again, that's facebook.com/OnTheMoveShow. First link on there. Leave your messages, your comments, questions, anything like that. I will respond. And at this point, we're going to go ahead and cut to a quick commercial break. And when we get back, we're going to go ahead and bring Jules on the line here, and we're going to start up that interview. So you guys don't want to go anywhere. We'll be right back.
Oath Keepers is a nonpartisan association of current active duty military, reserve, guard, veterans, peace officers, and firefighters who will fulfill the oath we swore, with the support of like-minded citizens who take an oath to stand with us, to support and defend the Constitution against all enemies, foreign and domestic. So help us God. Join us at oathkeepers.org.
Support On The Move. Help us make this podcast bigger and better. You can do this by going to our store and purchasing one of our hundreds of products. All designs are original and made for patriots like you. Just go to cafepress.com/OnTheMoveShow. We appreciate your support. Hi, I'm Latasha Worley, and I work with candidates to creatively and effectively communicate their message to voters. I offer professional graphic design services, from yard signs to flyers, from logos to vehicle magnets. Email me today at latashaworley@gmail.com. That's LATOSHA Worley@gmail.com for a quote on items for your campaign.
Broadcasting from deep within occupied territory on the far left coast. You're listening to On the Move with Mack Worley III. Stand up, speak out, and get on the move. And now your host, Mack Worley III.
And we're back. Okay, so before we get into the interview with Jules, we're going to just cover the Weekly Defender really fast. I want to move into this segment because, like I said, typically we get caught up in so much other stuff, and it's really easy for us to lose track. So I want to do this really fast, and we're going to get through it here. We got 2 quick articles about how citizens have used firearms to defend their family, their property, or themselves. And anyway, here we go.
And now it's time for the Weekly Defender. You have the right to defend your life, the right to defend your family, and the right to defend your freedom.
All right, our first Weekly Defender we found in an article on the Wyoming Tribune in Cheyenne, Wyoming. For those of you who don't know, this is actually my former stomping grounds. I used to live in Cheyenne, Wyoming. I was stationed at F.E. Warren Air Force Base in Wyoming when I was in the military. And anyway, it's crazy that this is in the news. I found it on the Wyoming Tribune, so I'm pretty interested about this story here. Anyway, a man with what looked like a real gun entered a Medicap pharmacy in Cheyenne, Wyoming. He pointed it at an employee, handed them a bag, and ordered them to fill it with oxycodone and Percocet. The pharmacist, Jackson Quick, became aware of the robbery, and retrieved a gun. As Quick was making his way to another part of the store, ducked behind a counter, the criminal spotted him. Quick responded by standing up and firing at the criminal, striking him, and ending the robbery. The robber expected to survive, and the police have made no charges against Quick yet. This was on the 9th of December when this article was written. So I want to talk about this a little bit in regards to Wyoming. For those of you who don't know what Wyoming is like, especially Cheyenne itself, it's kind of a sleepy little town that was built up around the same time as what they called at the time, I believe it was Fort Warren. Anyway, when it started, this whole base initially was an army base, and it was established to basically protect the railroad during the westward expansion. And I know we're kind of deviating here a little bit, but just so you know, this town grew with the base. It kind of, people who had their families, they ended up having a town outside, and it started growing. It's not a very big town. It's not huge. Doesn't have a whole lot of crime either. Living there, I can maybe count a handful of times during the 6 years I lived there that I can even remember anything about guns in the news or somebody getting shot. There were a few situations, some of them were gang-related, that I do remember. But anyway, this doesn't happen very often. There's not a whole lot of gun violence in Wyoming. And it's important to note that Cheyenne, in Wyoming in general, is a right to carry state. There is it's got constitutional carry. You do not need a permit to conceal carry in Wyoming. So it may be a big reason, that especially the gun culture out there. There's so many people out there with firearms, so many people, and it doesn't surprise me that when something like this does happen, somebody is there with a gun, because a lot of people have guns there. A lot of people are walking around with guns, but you don't hear about crimes happening tons of times out there in Wyoming. It just doesn't happen very often. Anyway, our next Weekly Defender we found on the Gaston Gazette in Gaston County, North Carolina. 68-year-old disabled veteran Joseph Sapienza was at home in Gastonia, North Carolina, when he heard a suspicious noise at his front door. Sapienza retrieved a .45 caliber pistol, placed it in a holster attached to a walker he used to get around, and opened the door. There were 2 masked men on his porch attempting to get inside. Recalling what happened next, Sapienza told a reporter, when they saw the .45 caliber, one ran one way up the street and the other went the other way. Sapienza believes that he may have been targeted by the criminals because of his disability. This was the 5th of December. So personally, I love hearing about armed citizens in the news. I love these kind of articles. I love hearing about how people who protect themselves, and they're not instigating violence. They're just trying to defend themselves. It's a God-given or natural right. People have a right to defend themselves from the scum of the earth like these people. So you have a right to defend your family, you have a right to defend your life, and you have a right to defend your freedom. We at On The Move, we support your rights. If you have a story about how you lawfully defended yourself or you'd like to comment on one of these stories, we would love to hear from you. Give us a call. The number to the show is 619-924-0986. Again, that's 619-924-0986. Or you can email the show at talk@onthemoveshow.com. Anyway, at this point, we're going to go ahead and bring Jules Czudar on the line. Are you there, Jules?
Hi, I'm here, Mack. How are you?
I'm doing well. So first and foremost, I just want to say thank you for taking your time out of the day to come join us on the show and talk about your experience. I want to give our listeners a little bit of background and first and foremost to give them the opportunity to learn a little bit about you and what you're doing. So from what I understand, you have a book about your experience. Is that right?
Yes, and thank you, Mack, for having me on the show. Yeah, I wrote a book, and it came out in June of this year, and I'm actually writing a second book to follow that up, and that should be out by the end of January next year.
Yes, sir. So where can people go to pick up a copy of your book?
Well, it's on Amazon, it's on iTunes, it's on Barnes & Noble. I also have a website, www.wehaveyourdaughter.com, and I have tabs there that'll take you directly to the book at those different locations.
Yes, sir. And that's the name of your book, right?
Yes. The name of the book is wehaveyourdaughter.com, and that came from what had happened is my ex had some severe emotional problems, which I never really knew about until all of this started to happen. And I was paying child support. She actually disappeared with my daughter for the first time for 3 years. And I kept calling social services over and over again, asking them to tell me where my daughter was at, and they always refused to tell me. And then one morning I get a call at about 7 o'clock in the morning, and they say, "Is this Mr. Czudar?" And I go, "Yeah, who's this?" And the quote from them was, "We have your daughter. Do you want her?" And so I asked, "Who are you?" And they said, "Social services." And I said, "Of course I want my daughter." So that's where I got the title from.
Yes, sir. So can you start at the beginning, I guess, and give us a little background on what exactly happened?
Yeah, what happened is that my wife and I, my ex-wife, or my wife at that time and my ex-wife now, we were living in Denver. We were both going to school. We had our first daughter, actually born at the Swedish Medical Center. And then from there, I was finishing up my BA in business. She was finishing up her BA in interior design, and I got accepted to grad school, which I never thought would ever happen in my life. As you read through the book, you'll understand why. And so they said that they would accept me, but I had to be there within a very quick period of time. I really didn't want to go because I felt it wouldn't be beneficial, for my family, especially my wife. We had our daughter, and she was only about a year and a half old at the time, and she was finishing up school. I didn't think it was necessarily a good idea. We talked about it, we prayed about it, and finally she said, "Go ahead and go. You don't get accepted to grad school often." So the plan was that I would come back at Easter. I started in February, I believe, or the end of January, and I would come back at Easter and get her. So things were a little bit weird on the phone, but I just thought that's the stress. I went home. Nothing was packed. We packed everything up. We drove all the way I got accepted to Regent University in Virginia Beach, drove all the way to Virginia Beach. The next morning when we were there, it was a Sunday. I was sitting at the table. My wife handed me my daughter and then disappeared. So the next thing I know, I didn't know how to handle my daughter. We only lived about 20 minutes away. I ran home, got a stroller, came back to the mall. As I walk up to the mall, one of the security guards said to me, "Are you Jules?" I go, "Yeah, who are you?" And he goes, "Well, we have your wife in the back, and we're getting ready to call the police, and it looks like we're going to put her on a 5150. For those who don't know that, that's a legal hold. The parameters or the requirements to put somebody into a psychiatric hospital nowadays are either a 5150 or a 5250. The 5150 is a 3-day legal hold, and you have to be gravely disabled, a danger to yourself, or a danger to others. And so they deemed her gravely disabled and put her into the hospital. From that period on, everything just started to deteriorate. While I was going to school, I was working 2-3 jobs at the time. I would come home, and my ex just started talking all this weird stuff that George Bush was her husband and the CIA had implanted something in her arm. And actually, my daughter and I, at one point, when I got custody of my daughter, were watching A Beautiful Mind, and there's this scene in there where, you know, he talks about, well, somebody implanted something in my arm, and me and my daughter looked at each other and we just said, that's Bob. And so it was kind of crazy. But then I decided I couldn't do this anymore. We're going back to California because that's where we were both from. Her parents were here. I said, I'm taking you home, and then we're going to figure out what's going on from here because we just cannot continue to do this. And she, you know, as you look in the book, I describe very vividly about what was going on and what a mess it was and how terrible the conditions were between our family. And then once we got home, we were at my parents' house until I found a place. And within 3 days, I came home one day, laid my keys on the counter. I went to the restroom, walked back out, and she was gone with my daughter. I didn't see her again for another 3 years.
Wow.
And so it was very, very hard, you know, and I tried to find her over and over again. And then once I got that call, I got my daughter. I had to go through a number of hoops to get her. She was placed into foster care for several months also. Finally, I was able to get her. So in this period of time, my ex was actually in the hospital, and I had gotten a contract job out in Las Vegas, so I was driving back and forth from Las Vegas to the hospital so she could see my daughter for 2 hours every weekend and then go back to Las Vegas. You know, I'm a Christian man. My ex had asked me, and so did my daughter, could we try to put our family back together again? I believe that was probably what we should do. And so I said, okay, we'll put our family back together again, but the caveats are this. You have to continue to take your medication, you have to continue to go see the doctor, and we have to see the doctor together. Well, after we moved in, and I got several different opinions saying, you know, you really shouldn't do this, and you should, you know, have her do this and this, and so I decided that we're going to go ahead and try it. I found out that the day we moved into the apartment, she had stopped taking her medication. And I think one of the issues for my ex is that she, and again, you know, I understand about medication. I was a licensed psychiatric technician in the state of California for 10 years. I dealt with mentally ill patients. I worked 5150 units. I was typically in charge of those units, so I understand about mental illness. And not necessarily back then they had what was called Halidol. Wasn't the best medication, but she should have continued to take in the medication because it significantly helped her. So after about 6-7 months, things started to deteriorate really quickly again because she stopped taking her medication. I tried to call social services to help me out. They said, you're on your own. She found out that I called them. She disappeared with my daughter again for another 1.5 years. But this time, she accused me of abusing her and my daughter. And when you get into the book, you know, you realize that it was bogus and it was only used to keep me away from them. I had a legal court order to see my daughter. I would go. We finally found out where she was there. I would go and knock on the door with the police officer with me. She would refuse to come out. And so we go back in the court, and I'd say to the judge, well, she's not letting me see my daughter. And he'd say, well, what are you whining about? So, I mean, it was just like a catch-22. But because she had accused me of abuse, I had a criminal case, too. And so the only thing I could think of to help me was I said, I want a psychological evaluation of all of us, all three of us, my daughter, my ex, and myself. If I had not done that, the outcome of everything would have been completely different. And this is why I stress in the book, too, just so you know, Mack, it's a book on faith. You know, again, it's about forgiveness, it's about hope, and it's about belief. But the end result was I walked into court pro per for the abuse and walked out of court with case dismissed. And I can, you know, again, it talks about the different things I had to go through to get that done. But all in all, after 8 years, we walk into court one day, and the judge kept telling me, we have to wait for the psychological evaluation. We have to wait for the psychological evaluation. So finally it came in, and it was a scathing report on the doctors that were treating my ex, and a scathing report on her and her alleged abuse allegations. And so as we walked into court, the judge looked at my ex and said, "Has father seen daughter?" And, she always, she was a pretty girl. She always had this ability of social ability, and she was really a social butterfly, so everybody always would be engaged with her. But once you started talking to her, you would realize how really sick she was. And then so she started her, "Oh, Judge, you don't understand what a bad man he is." And he said, "No. Has father seen daughter? He has a legal court order to see her." And she said no. And he talked about the report, and he says, "Mrs. Czudar, you will forthwith hand over your daughter to your husband." And all pandemonium broke out in the courthouse. My ex started screaming and wailing. And so they said to the bailiff, hold Mrs. Czudar here. Mr. Czudar, go upstairs, and we'll lead you to your daughter. So in the course of all this, my ex's sister was there. We figured that this might happen. I didn't want to scare my daughter, so I had her stay with her for about a month while I was visiting her. And then after a month, she came home. And to this day, we have a wonderful relationship. And my second book is actually talking about me raising her by myself after that. So it was a very dark time, but it was a very strong time too, because I got to really test my faith. I got to test what God would do. I got my daughter back.
Yes, sir.
And I wouldn't give up. And that's what I would say to everybody out there that's going through something like this too. There were incredibly dark days. There were days that were very, very hard. But, I kept on believing that it was going to work out. I kept on believing, the words that I read in the Bible, and I kept on believing that God is a good God, and all good things come from God, and I did not give up. And as you read through the book, you will see how difficult it was and what happened in a short period of time, how everything turned around. So to everybody out there, and believe me, I know that this goes on both sides. I know that there are mothers who want to see their children that are kept from seeing their children. I know there are fathers who are being kept from their children who want to see their children. And the reality is that our kids need both of us. And I understand divorce. I understand the dynamics of how angry people can be in the divorce. But that doesn't mean that you get to take all that out on your children. If you are really looking for the best for your child, they need both parents. And I can tell you about, and I can tell you about when, at Mother's Day, how difficult those times were. And it's kind of funny because I still get a Mother's Day and a Father's Day card from my daughter. She's 25, 26 now. But, it is, I understand that people are angry. But again, the court's always talking about what's in the best interest of the child. The lawyers are always talking about what's in the best interest of the child. The problem is they don't ask the child what they think their best interest is. Mm-hmm. They always rely, unfortunately, on the person who has the most money.
As far as your daughter, how old was she during this whole episode, and how old is she? You said she's 25 now?
Yeah, she's 20. I think she's going on 26. I can't remember exactly, but I got her, I believe, when, let me see, it was in 2000, so it's 14. Yeah, I think she was around 12 or 13 years old when I got her for full coverage.
What does she think about all this? What is her thoughts on it now that she's older?
Well, I actually had her read the book before I sent it to the publisher. And she said, Dad, that's pretty right on. And she also thinks that, if you read through the book, there are just some really strange things that my ex had done. And my daughter is grateful that she was able to get out of there. And although she still actually it's funny because her mother lives somewhere in this area. We know exactly where she lives in a halfway house now, and from where she was to where she is today is completely sad to see her. We see her occasionally, and it is devastating to see where she is at now. And it's sad because her main issue was that she didn't want to take the medication because she would have to admit that she was sick. And my daughter loves her mom, but realizes that at the point today of where she is at mentally, they can't have a real relationship. But she's thanked me several times for fighting for her and for getting her out of that situation. And I never stopped her from seeing her mom. But there was one incident where we were actually having lunch, and I said, honey, look, there's your mom. She's walking down the road. Why don't you go talk to her? And I'll wait in the car. Take as long as you want, and I'll just wait for you there. Within 3 minutes, she was standing by the door crying, and I said, what's the matter, honey? She goes, I don't want to talk about it. I want to go home. I said, please, baby, just tell me what's going on. She goes, no, I just want to go home. So we came home. She went right to her room, sat in her room, and about an hour later, she comes out and she goes, do you know what her first words were to me? I said, no, honey, what? She goes, she said that your father isn't your father, your real father. And she looked at her and said, are you out of your mind? Just look at us, so, and then she said to her mom, if you continue to act like this, I can't see you because this is too difficult. So she's in agreement with the book. She's read the book. She knows I'm writing the second book. I've actually sat down with her and went over a couple of things that I'm writing for the second book. But we have a wonderful relationship. She lives 2 or 3 miles away from me. We go out to dinner on a regular basis. As a matter of fact, 2 weeks ago, we're at a wonderful dinner. And so she understands what happened. And although she would have liked to have a better relationship with her mother, she understands what happened.
As far as the charges that were leveled against you from the false accusations, what exactly were you charged with, and what was your response to that? And also, what were some of the thoughts that you were having? I know personally, I've gone through my own legal battle, and it can tear you up inside, and I definitely feel for anybody who's out there facing false charges and trying to prove their innocence. What were some of the thoughts that you had going on at the time?
Well, it was certainly, I at that point I got angry because, again, I didn't want, I still wanted the relationship because, I thought that's what I should do as a Christian man. And plus I still, loved my ex at that point and thought what would be best for my daughter. But once she did that, I got angry. She accused me of hitting her and hitting my daughter. Well, when it turned out finally, when I got the police report, it turned out that she went 3 days after this supposed incident and went to the doctor and told the doctor I had clapped her ears. And so the doctor wrote this idiotic note that said, well, he could have and he couldn't have, but, he could have. And so this is what they arrested me on. And my understanding is in the state of California, you have to be present. A police officer has to be present and determine if there was any type of alleged abuse that happened. None of this happened. And then the doctor that she got to help her was a woman's advocate who actually had some kind of affair going on with her, wrote a letter, sent it to the judge, which is illegal, and said that I was the worst sociopath that he had ever laid eyes on, or something to that effect. The problem was that he never talked to me. And the problem is you cannot do that and label somebody with a diagnosis without ever meeting them. And I actually wrote to the American Psychological Association, and I got him sanctioned for what he did. So,
wow.
I'm sorry?
Oh, I was just saying, wow, that's crazy. Continue.
Yeah, and so in this whole process where I was getting the psychological evaluation for all three of us, I had a woman psychologist, and I thought, oh man, here I go, I'm going to get screwed again, But the doctor actually showed up with my ex at a meeting and was holding her hand and doing all these weird things. So the first time I went and met with the psychologist, I had this mountain of information of the different hospitalizations that she had about her being on medication, about false accusations against her family, her parents, and her sister and stuff. And she said, Mr. Czudar, I believe you. I was so surprised, because it had been so difficult for so long. And he said, I believe you, and I believe that the doctor's behavior is beyond the pale and really should be noted. And so with all of that, so I had to hire an attorney. So I get this attorney, and then on top of everything else, I got what was known as the hanging judge in Long Beach. She hated abusers and went out of her way to make sure that abusers were prosecuted and given the full sentence. So I talked to my attorney and said, here's my evidence. And he goes, well, let me tell you what's going to happen. So you're going to have to cop to abuse, and then you're going to get 1 year of classes, and then after that, everything will go away. Or not go away, but then you'll go on with your life. I looked at him and I said, you're out of your mind. I'm never copping to anything. I never touched my daughter. I never touched my wife. I loved both of them. I still love my daughter, but I'm not copping to anything. And he goes, well, then you'll go to jail for 1 year. I said, then I'll go to jail for 1 year, but I'm not copping to anything. So we got a 3-month stay because everybody was waiting for that psychological evaluation.
Yes, sir.
So we had to go back to court after 3 months, and that attorney sees me at the door as we're getting ready to go, and he goes, okay, you ready to cop? I said, I told you I'm not copping to anything. And he goes, well, then you're going to go to jail. And I looked at him, I said, give me my folders and get out of here. I said, if all you wanted was my money, why didn't you tell me from the get-go? And then I could have gotten rid of you back then. So I walk into court by myself in front of the judge, and the judge says, where's your attorney, Mr. Czudar? And I said, well, I fired him. And she said, well, that wasn't very smart, was it? I said, well, we'll see. And I said, I need another 3 months. The evaluation still hasn't come in. She goes, okay, Mr. Czudar, I'll give you 3 more months, but no more. Do you understand me? And I said, yes. So I walked out, and then I was really pissed. And then I started to get all this information together. I got her parents on my side. I got somebody who was actually helping her with the court case, and she came over to my side. And so about a week or two before we were going to go to court again, I called the assistant district attorney who was prosecuting me, and I said, I need to meet with you. And she goes, okay. So we met at the courthouse, and I laid out a 10-point deal, which is in the book, about why, if she continued to prosecute me, not only would I sue her personally for malicious prosecution, but I would also sue the state and the city of Long Beach for malicious prosecution. And she started to laugh, and I said, what, this is funny to you? Why are you laughing? She goes, no, I was just trying to make light, because I did get a message from the psychologist, because we talked to her, and we have some real issues with this case. And so I said, well, what are you going to do? Because I'm getting ready to sue. And she goes, well, give me a couple of days and I'll call you. She called me in a couple of days, and then she said to me, Mr. Czudar, we're going to drop the case. You're first up on the docket. Be there at 8:30 on the day you're supposed to appear, and this will all be over then. So it's 8:30. We'll walk into the courtroom. The courtroom is packed. It was so packed that they actually had other defendants sitting in the jury chairs because it was so packed. So we're first up, and we walk up, and the judge looks at me again and says, Mr. Czudar, where's your attorney? I said, I don't have one, Your Honor. And she goes, okay. Looks at the assistant district attorney and said, proceed. And she goes, Your Honor, we're going to drop all charges. And she looked at her, and she looked at me, and she looked at her, and then she looked back at me, and she said, well, you're a lucky man, aren't you, Mr. Czudar? I said, no, Your Honor. I'm an innocent man. And the whole courtroom was so hushed again, you could hear a pin drop. I turned around and I walked out. And that only happened because without God, I don't think any of that happened. I can go into time after time after time that God showed up and helped me. Here's a quick anecdotal thing. Here I have to get some attorneys. I'm trying to figure out where in the world am I going to get an attorney. I roll up to a red light. I stop at the red light. I look over to my right, and there's a banner that says, Father's Rights, call 1-800. And so I called that number. It turned out that this guy said, well, I can't help you, but here's an attorney who can. It turns out this attorney had been an advocate for fathers' rights for like 30 years old. He was an old curmudgeon type of guy, my type of guy, and he actually had a wealth of knowledge. Everybody knew him in the Long Beach courthouse. So that's just one thing. But the book goes into time after time when there was intervention, divine intervention, and I really believe had it not been for God, there could have been a real different end to the story and an end to both my daughters and my life.
So let me ask you, as far as lessons learned from this whole experience, what do you have that you reflect back on and you would like to say as a piece of advice to anybody who's in a similar situation?
Well, I would definitely say be very careful of the attorney that you hire. Vet that attorney, read up on them. Now, in today's economy, you can go online and figure out if the guy has ever been sanctioned, if there were anything that was written against him and sent to the American Bar Association, but really vet the person that you're going to get for you there. And then also, I would say, it's a long, hard process, and I think the reason it's such a long, hard process, as it was back then, but even more so now, is because it's all about money. The courts make money, the child services make money, everybody makes money off of, the attorneys make money, everybody is making money, so it's in their best interest to prolong your case. And so the real issue is can we somehow, and again, the person who typically prevails is the person with the most money. And so what I would say is that, again, make sure that you know who's on your side. Make sure you lay out exactly to that attorney what you want to accomplish and how you want to accomplish that, and get that person on your side. If he's got a million cases going on, which is typical nowadays, you have to be very careful. The second thing is have faith in God. If you're not a believer, and certainly I'm not trying to push this on anybody, this is my experience, and this is what happened to me. Had it not been for my faith, I don't know what would have happened, because in that period of time, I began to drink heavily, and I even got arrested for a DUI, and I don't know what would have happened, but once I got that DUI, I realized that this was not the way to go, and I sobered up and I quit drinking for quite a long time. And the third thing is never give up. This
yes,
is
sir.
your child that you're talking about. This is what it's all about, is making sure that, I come from a European family. We escaped Hungary in 1959 and came to this country. And our family dynamics is making sure that your child got a better life than you did. And so, I even heard one person tell me, I commend you for raising your daughter. You could have done a number of other things. I said, what do you mean? She's my daughter. And the whole point of fighting for her was to give her a better hold in life. And in that time, I was able to teach her about not only my faith in God, but also respect. My daughter is a smart little girl. She got her degree in interior design. She did that BA in 3.5 years on the quarter system. She knows how to use Revit like nobody's business, which is a CAD/CAM software. One of my clients at the time was NBC Universal. I got her a job there, and she is just a whiz. It is a joy to be around her and see her. And that is not because, I can say over and over again, I wish it was only me, so I could, thump my chest saying it was me who did that. But it was certainly because we went to church. We had a life where I was able to work, bring in money, do well, and we formed our relationship around God and our family, and still to this day do that. So faith is an integral part in my experience, and I would say to others that you might look at that also.
Yes, sir. That's very sound advice. I talk a lot about, and we have in the past on the show, about dealing with CPS and Child Protective Services and the dangers that parents face. A lot of people don't even realize that letting these people into their home is basically a form of discovery, and the whole situation of people getting caught up in this system, having to deal with this, as you said, it is a lot about money. A lot of this is money related, and it's very concerning because people don't realize that they are being put into this system and they're having to fight for just to be left alone. Some of these people had charges leveled against them very similar to you, completely false, fabricated charges. And they find themselves going broke, fighting for their family. Literally, they are fighting for their family, and it disturbs me when people get swept up in the system, and some people feel like they're being forgotten about, and that nobody's there on their side. I'm happy to hear that you didn't give up, and we at this show, we are on the family side. We believe in family rights. We believe in people's right just to be left alone. And, a lot of people think that we're personally me, I'm a one-trick pony as far as the Second Amendment or something. But no, I believe in individual rights, family rights. I believe in these things wholeheartedly. Most importantly, of just having the government stay out of your business, and it's upsetting to me that many people find themselves in your position, false charges, and they have to basically spend their whole life savings trying to right a wrong that was leveled against them.
I agree with you. And, my ex emptied out my apartment when my daughter and I got back together. I had nothing. We moved into a condo, and this is a big joke too. We moved into a condo. We had 2 beds. We didn't even have a couch. We had 2 chairs because it came with the condo, and we had 1 TV. And for a year, we lived like that until finally somebody gave us a couch because they felt sorry for us. So I know all about that, because typically what happens is, in today's economy, is they accuse you, then the ex either moves out or she tells you to move out. So then all of a sudden you've now got to hire not only a criminal attorney but a divorce attorney. Then you've got to pay child support. Then you've got to pay alimony. Then you've got to try to earn a living. And then you've got to try to have an apartment for your own. I mean, it is set against you getting out of the hole, and it is really done to destroy as much as they can. And I agree with you wholeheartedly. And I had a couple of run-ins with the CPS and the Department of Children's Services here in California. And, they are not nice people. And I don't care what they say. I understand they have a job to do, but they are not nice people. All you have to do is be accused, and then you have to prove yourself innocent, which is directly antithetical to what the law is that you're innocent until you're proved guilty. And in today's economy, now somebody can just accuse you of it, and then all of these horrendous things start to work in your family. And, we had a couple of run-ins with them, and again, I understand they have a job to do, but then there is a humanity that is involved with that you should deal with each other in a human facet. And again, I understand, because there are some people who do abuse their children. They're in a difficult position too. But you're right. Government does not have the right to raise our children. I went back to Hungary. I've been back to Hungary several times because I have relatives back there. The first time I went to Hungary, I can still see etched in my mind on the children's schools these murals of the hammer and the sickle saying, the state educates your children. The state is the one who takes care of your children. The state is the one who provides for your children. And this is the nonsense that was repeated and pounded into their heads over and over again. Murals everywhere. Secrecy everywhere. My dad was actually taken on his way to the gulags from the revolution back in '56. So I know what can happen, and I think a lot of people who live in this country don't realize what it is not to have any rights whatsoever. And I see the government slowly infringing on our rights. And I applaud you for standing up for, those things like the Constitution and other rights that we have. These are inalienable rights to us. And having come from a country that we had to escape from so that my father wouldn't be thrown into the prison. And, when I first went back to Hungary, that country was destroyed. You would walk in, I remember walking into the North train station at 12 o'clock at night. The place was packed. Everybody was drunk. Nobody liked life. You couldn't even say a political joke without closing the shutters and closing the doors for fear of your neighbor turning you in. And slowly but surely, if you give over these rights, that's what will happen.
And you bring up very interesting points. I want to talk about and relate this to what we see here in America. First and foremost, I love it when I can talk to immigrants who came here legally, lawfully, who have adopted our way of life and aren't trying to change the way that we are. That they're conforming and becoming Americanized, so to speak, and becoming part of this, melting pot. And one thing we hear a lot about, people always talk about America as a melting pot. Okay, well, what happens when you throw a bunch of different kinds of the same metal, all right, and when I'm saying that, I'm regarding to like humanity. You throw a bunch of the same kinds of metal into a pot and it melts. It all becomes the same. You can't tell the difference between a piece of steel that was formed in one particular fashion or another is if they're all melted in together into this melting pot. We all become Americans, not Cubans who are living here and they just so happen to be Americans, or Africans that are living here that just so happen to be Americans. Everybody is American. We adopt American values. This is one great thing about the country, and I love hearing from immigrants or people from immigrant families who talk about these things and talk about how the systems that they left are not the right systems. They don't want to continue to carry on this totalitarian form of government that is in every aspect of your life. And we see on MSNBC and things like that. There's a commercial that was out. I think it was last year that they said your children don't belong to you. They would belong to all of us. Essentially going on that old adage. It takes a village to raise a child, but I get concerned when I hear about things like this because, if I had a kid, I don't have any children right now, but if I did have a kid, I don't want my neighbors being involved in how to raise my children. I don't want the government to get involved and tell me how I can raise my children. This I think speaks at the heart of liberty, being able to teach your kids your values and have the government stay out of your business. That kind of stuff is so important because what you teach your children will carry on to the next generation. And those values, if they are never taught, most of the time they won't be learned. And if we're leaving it to the government to teach our children, we're in a whole lot of trouble. What do you think about that?
I agree with you wholeheartedly. The government has no business in your kid's life. It is not your business what I do with my child. Of course, if I do something untoward toward my family or my child, then the government has a right to look at that, but it doesn't have the right to regulate how I run my family. And, we, when we escaped, we went from Hungary to Yugoslavia. From Yugoslavia, we went to Sweden. We waited 2 years in Sweden for our papers to come to America. If anybody could have gotten political asylum, it would have been my father, but he decided that we're going to do it right, so we waited in Sweden. We came to America in 1959. I started school at 5.5 years old. I went to first grade at 5.5 years old. I didn't speak a word of English. By 6 months down the line, I spoke perfect English. I spoke perfect Hungarian. I still speak fluent Hungarian, and I think I do pretty well in English too. And we weren't cajoled back then. You had to invest yourself into the community and into the way that things were run. We didn't get a chance to say, well, I don't know if I can learn American or English or whatever. I remember walking home from school. We went to Cleveland, Ohio, and walking home from school, and people challenging me every day and fighting my way home because they would call me hunky because I was from Hungary. And, so I had to deal with all that. The government has absolutely no right to dictate to any of us what we are going to teach our children, what our children are going to believe, and certainly have no right, like I heard just recently, somebody in the administration saying that if you hear your parents not being politically correct, you should inform on them. This is the absolute epitome of the destruction of the family when you engage your children or you engage somebody's children in that type of activity. Wait a minute.
One second, sir. I just want to clarify. This came out of this administration telling children to tattle on their parents, essentially? Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
Okay. I hadn't heard that. That sounds very similar to the Hitler Youth kind of thing, where you tell on your parents, and they were training children to do that same thing. That's very concerning. I'm going to have to do some research on that.
I can tell you offline. I don't know if this is the proper place for me to say that, but I can tell you offline exactly where it came from. It is very distressing to say the least. And and the last point I wanted to make was it is clearly, to me, anti-God because we're supposed to be taking our instruction hopefully based on some kind of faith and some kind of morals. We've seen so many times when the state takes over and starts dictating who or what you're supposed to do, where God is completely beat out of that system. For instance, the USSR, China, where they have their communist government. We look at Cuba. We can see certainly that there is no direct relationship with any kind of God in that particular point, but especially in the God I believe in. And the state then destroys the original concept of where we came from. It is not the state that provides anything to us. We provide to the state. And that is, for some people, legal and illegal, and they have no right to tell us what we are supposed to do with our families and our children.
Yes, sir. And, you bring up an interesting point because in terms of two interesting points, actually. First thing, as far as providing to the federal government or the federal government providing to us, everything that the government has, it is literally stolen from someone else. It doesn't produce anything. It just steals. It takes from somebody and gives to somebody else. They're not Robin Hood. That's just theft. That is exactly the definition of theft. When you steal, that's from somebody, you take from somebody without their consent, that is theft. So, they're not providing anything. They're just taking from us, and anything that they give back to us, they're literally paying us with our own money and other people's money. And in terms of, the disillusion of belief in God. I personally, I'm not a religious man. I'm agnostic. I'm not against religion. I'm very, very tolerant and respectful of religion. I come from a religious background, so I know a lot about religion, and I grew up in Sunday schools and things like that. But what I see with the government, and this is not just the United States government, this is all governments in general, and in terms, this is really the religion of statism. They create a religion in of itself to where they are the God, they are the deity. You pray to them. Everything that you get is because they gave it to you. They deemed you worthy. That this is the statist mindset of where we get rid of God and we create a new religion of government.
I agree with you wholeheartedly. And you're absolutely right. The state sets itself up as some kind of benevolent, if you want to call it a being, we can, but an entity for sure, that it's a benevolent entity. But the the beneficial portion of that is to who they deem is worthy of that. So not everybody is worthy of their benefits. only certain people are worthy of the benefits, those who support them, certainly, and those who adhere to what they say. Because you can look at our society today, and, we can look at the Obamacare, for that matter, and see that certainly the people who are profiting from that are those who put nothing into it, really. And so we just continue to subsidize those who believe in the state as opposed to those who say we don't need the state and let us fend for ourselves.
Absolutely. I could not agree more. You're talking about negative income tax, subsidies on things like Obamacare. So, I mean, this is the biggest problem, a big problem that we face right now is we got so many people who are getting handouts from the government who haven't paid into it, haven't done anything to earn those. It's just those entitlements of just because you were born, you are now entitled to your neighbor's money. And even though you don't pay this much in taxes, we're going to give you $1,500 per child and give it back to you. And you end up profiting off of your neighbor's taxes. This whole system is set up to continue and perpetuate this whole praying to the state, creating the statist government, the statist religion, and I could not agree more with you. I got a lot of respect for you, Jules. We actually got to wrap up this segment, though, and cut to a commercial break. Before we go, though, Jules, I want to just give you another opportunity. Can you plug your book, give people more information about your website and things like that you got going on?
Yep. Again, and thank you, Mack. I really appreciate you letting me be on your show. It's always a pleasure to talk to people who are like-minded. My website is www.wehaveyourdaughter.com. The We Have Your Daughter is all one word. I do have a couple of videos up with my daughter also. They're on YouTube. Just look that up, too. And then I am on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and iTunes. And, again, if you go to my website, on the last page in the back, there are several buttons that you can hit. Will take you directly to the book, and you can order it there.
Yes, sir. Well, thank you again for coming on. I'm really happy that you came on and you had some time to talk to us. This was a great interview. I really have a lot of respect for you, and I wish you the best of luck. And by the way, Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas to you, Mack, and I wish you a radio show on prime time.
Yes, sir. Well, thank you. We'll keep swinging. Anyway, guys,
right.
That was Jules Czudar. He's the author of the book, We Have Your Daughter. Check out his stuff. It's on Amazon. You can check him out on his website, wehaveyourdaughter.com. And again, guys, check out his stuff. I'm really just blown away at this man and the story that he went through. And he's got a great head on his shoulders. One thing in particular too that I like is the fact that he comes from an immigrant background. And he's speaking out against the kind of systems that he left behind. This is amazing. These are the kind of people that we need to hear from, and these are actually stories that we're about to illustrate here in the next few segments of the show. I have a few people that I want to talk about in regards to Cuba, and they just so happen to be Cuban immigrants or come from a Cuban family, and this is their take on it. And again, I've said it before, the people that we need to hear about in terms of immigration or foreign policy, people are people from those areas. Those people are the ones that can really give you the best insight, and I think those voices absolutely need to be heard. So we're gonna give some highlight on those. Also, we're going to talk about public servants that have gone wild. But immediately when we get back, I want to talk about a protest that was had very recently about police department obtaining an MRAP, one of those heavy armored vehicles. So a bunch of citizens got together and they started protesting about it. And Gavin Syme was there, and he had an interview with Infowars.com. We're going to play that interview when we get back, and we're going to talk about this a little bit more. So don't go anywhere. You do not want to miss the next segment.
I do solemnly swear that I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States of America against all enemies, foreign and domestic, and that I will bear true faith and allegiance to the same, and that I take this obligation freely without any mental reservation or purpose of evasion, pledging my life, my fortune, and my sacred honor. So help me God. Join us at oathkeepers.org.
support On the Move. Help us make this podcast bigger and better. You can do this by going to our store and purchasing one of our hundreds of products. All designs are original and made for patriots like you. Just go to cafepress.com/onthemoveshow. We appreciate your support. Hi, I'm Latasha Worley, and I work with candidates to creatively and effectively communicate their message to voters. I offer professional graphic design services, from yard signs to flyers, from logos to vehicle magnets. Email me today at latashaworley@gmail.com. That's LAGOSHA Worley@gmail.com for a quote on items for your campaign.
Broadcasting from deep within occupied territory on the far left coast. You're listening to On the Move with Mack Worley III. Stand up, speak out, and get on the move. And now your host, Mack Worley III.
And we're back. Okay, so when we last left, we had Jules Czudar on the phone. He was giving us his account of his epic 8-year battle to get his daughter back. Wow, that was a crazy story, and I'm really, really grateful that he had the time to come on the program. That was a very good interview. I'm really excited about that. So, anyway, I want to move on a little bit here, and we're going to move a little further into some of the other topics I want to get to. The first thing I want to actually talk about is this protest by citizens that were demanding action over the militarized police, over this police department that actually obtained an MRAP. And and the citizens of this community, they did not want the police to be out there on their street with armor. They didn't think that there was a need for it. And, I don't know if you guys know where I stand on this. I am not a fan of militarized police. I think that, police departments should not have the same kind of weaponry that our military has. Just because you give them this equipment does not mean that they are capable of using it. First and foremost, they're not the military, nor should they be. There's a really important reason why we don't have police or the military police in our streets, because they don't operate the same way in a peacekeeping fashion that peace officers are supposed to do. When you're out there in a full body armor, you got your weapon, and you're rolling around in an armored vehicle, things like that. That doesn't put a good face on the police. Now, you guys know me. I'm a fan of open carry. I think that open carry citizens have the right to bear arms. I think that these kind of things are important and rights that we should have. But when you're talking about from a standpoint of enforcing laws or giving the government the ability to do these kind of things, I'm against that. I think that the government should have less rights. I think the citizens should have more rights. I feel like more people should police themselves and rely less on the government. And also, in terms, too, I want to talk a little historically here. I'm going to kind of go down a rabbit hole for a second, but I'll bring it back. After World War II, Germany changed quite a bit. And to this day, from what I understand, the German police aren't allowed to carry the same kind of weapons that their military carries. And initially, this actually led to police having what they called the 9mm Kurtz round. All right, that's Kurtz, I believe, if I'm remembering correctly. But this is a round that was created for the purpose of German police, because what they had just went through was a total military takeover, essentially martial law, where the military and the police were all intertwined, and they had the same kind of weaponry that their military had patrolling the streets. Germany did not want to ever get in that situation again. They wanted to limit their police department's ability to do this kind of stuff, and they created what they called the 9mm Kurtz round. And for those of you who don't know what that is our 3 .380 round, the 380. It's a small little compact round. I actually have one, and they're little tiny guns, that most of them that shoot them, but they are essentially the same diameter around as a 9mm round. They're just shorter. They have like half the powder essentially, and they have a little less knockdown power. But this is just one example of governments that have done these kind of things to limit the militarization of their police. And Germany, I think, is a good example to look at of people who had seen a militarization of their police get to the point of tyranny. And it was a big issue. It was a problem. So they wanted to take steps that would never ever put them in that situation again. I personally am not a big fan of looking at other countries and letting them show us the way. I don't typically believe in following other people's examples, because America, we are an experiment. We are different than any other country. We broke the traditions of the past. We started governing through popular sovereignty, which is essentially the whole idea that people rule themselves, and that our governments are created by consent of the people. So this kind of idea, it was out there. It was crazy in the past. And in the past, around these times, they believed in king, like the right of kings, because of God. They are. If they're the king, they rule because God wants them to rule. That's the way it was looked at back in those days. But America broke those traditions. We set out on our own path. It's important that we make our own way, but I think we can learn from some things in history, not necessarily use the formats that other countries are using, but I think it's important that we are at least aware of what happened in the past and what people did as a response to it. So anyway, I want to play this video here. Is on Infowars.com. It's Gavin Syme talking about this rally that happened against the MRAP about militarized police. I believe this was in Washington as well. Here's a clip.
I'm Joe Biggs with Infowars.com, and I'm standing here with
Gavin Syme.
And who are you?
I am a Liberty speaker. I ran for Congress and lost this last year, but that's okay because we brought the whole race more constitutional, and I tend to do activism, videos, things like that. That's mostly where I'm known from, and just trying to encourage people to start standing up to the tyranny we see rising in America, to start standing up for liberty and quit backing down to these petulant, childish bullies that call themselves the authority over us.
So what did you want to achieve by coming out here today? I know that we had the remarks made by the officer about the MRAP being used for constitutionalists. How does that make you feel?
It makes me feel like we have a lawless government who has no respect for the people, and we see this all the time. I am not from this county, but we came up here a few weeks ago, a friend, Anthony Bosworth, a fellow patriot, and myself, and we went to the safety complex over by the sheriff's office due to the issue of unmarked cars, because in Washington State it's illegal for them to drive unmarked cars. And we had a big conversation that kind of went around the world a month or so ago about this, because we have these cars stopping people, that people get raped, people get murdered, all kinds of stuff. In fact, in this county a few years ago, Mr. Creech actually got killed on his own property when an officer came in an unmarked car and parked there, and he went out to check on it, and he ended up getting shot. It was a terrible thing. The bottom line is, and where I'm going with this is, whether it's unmarked cars, whether it's MRAPs and militarized police, there's an attitude among our public officials that they're in charge, that they are the masters and we are the servants, and it's not the other way around. They're the servants and we're the masters. So my reason for being out here supporting this is just to stand with these people. A lot of them were over in Olympia with us last week. We had the I-594 rally that's defying the new I-594 law. It was the largest felony civil disobedience in American history. So myself and some of our team were organizing that. They had another rally like that here today, and then we came down here to stand with these guys and deal with this lawless sheriff that they have that thinks that the people serve him instead of he serves the people.
Well, sir, we need more people like you throughout America. Thank you for being out here.
Thank you.
I had a chance to watch your speech earlier.
Awesome.
It's very moving, very motivational, and I hope a lot of people that watch this video at home right now are going to get the exact same feeling, that we've got to stand up to the tyranny that's going on in America. Thank you once again.
Thank you again. Yeah, that's the bottom line. Liberty's not the fringe. Liberty's the foundation. We need.
So, first of all, I wanted to go to this event, this protest. I was unable to make it, but I'm happy to hear that this kind of stuff is going on. I love that people are standing up against this kind of thing. And on top of which, I'm sure many of you have heard on the news there was somebody in a police department or sheriff's department, and they were making comments that we need these kind of MRAPs because there's a lot of constitutionalists out there. Really? We need MRAPs because there's constitutionalists. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I haven't heard of any situation where a constitutionalist was taken down by an MRAP because he was doing something he shouldn't have been doing, breaking the law. Perhaps I'm wrong. Maybe there's something out there. If there is, feel free to let me know. Give me a call, 619-924-0986, or you can email the show at talk@onthemoveshow.com. Here's the thing about this, though, is that constitutionalism, since when did that become a bad thing? Since when did the whole idea of reverency and respect for our Constitution become a marker of terrorist activities or a threat to public safety? This, to me, is a really important thing that we need to identify here, because this is happening in our police departments. People that have taken an oath to uphold and defend the Constitution. Now, I'm not saying that every single police officer is wrong or evil or out there doing the wrong thing. I think a majority of these people are probably really strongly believe in the Constitution. That's what I believe. I don't have any facts behind that. I just know conversations that I've had with police officers, and a lot of them really do respect and honor the Constitution. One problem, though, is that a lot of them don't know the Constitution, trained on the Constitution. Yeah, they have a little training here and there. And me being security forces in the military, I can tell you I never, not one time, had a class on the Constitution. I didn't have any conversations about what I could and could not do according to the rights of these individuals if I was doing crowd control or something like that. Never had any training on any of this. None. And it's no surprise that we see police officers that just don't know what they can and can't do. I'm sure they have a little bit of information. I'm sure they probably got a lot better training than I did. But again, they don't know everything, and they also don't know the Constitution. Many of them are not constitutional scholars, neither am I. I'm guilty of not knowing my fair share of information as well, and I've taken steps to try to learn and understand, first of all, the foundation of this country, constitutional intent from the beginning, but also how things apply now, what rights we possess now, Supreme Court interpretations, and I won't even get into the Supreme Court's legitimacy, but I understand these things now. I'm at a point now where I have taken a lot of time to try to better my lot as far as understanding and learning these things. And I know it's a lot to ask that every single police officer do the same thing, but how can you take an oath to something that you don't know what it says? How can you swear to honor and obey or protect and defend the Constitution if you don't know what's in it? How? This is the whole thing, too, about state education, the federal government getting involved in teaching our children, especially about the Constitution. Think about this, okay? Here's something that is left to the government. We have public educations, public institutions. These are the people that are responsible for teaching our children. How can you trust the government to teach people what the government can't do? It doesn't make any sense. It behooves the government not to teach you what they can't do. It just makes sense, especially from a standpoint of, the government actually teaching the Constitution. It doesn't make any sense for them to do this, because they're basically arming you against themselves. So we see now people know less about the Constitution than ever before. People can't even articulate what liberty means, what the word means. Ask somebody, ask your friends, ask your family, what does liberty mean, and tell them not to use the word freedom. They're going to struggle. Most people are going to have a hard time struggling what the word liberty means without using the word freedom. You may have people that mention rights. You know, that's what a lot of it is. But honestly, in my opinion, liberty is just being left the hell alone. That's it. Leave me the hell alone. That's my version of liberty. Anyway, I want to cover another story here, something that was in the news recently, and I think it's important that we address. There was a shooting of 2 police officers. They were shot by a person who had apparently already killed his ex-girlfriend, and then he traveled to New York City. The police got some information that this individual was coming. He posted on social media saying that he was going to go kill police. Posted a picture of the Quran, and this hasn't really been covered a whole lot in the news, and even in this clip I'm about to play, they don't mention this. We'll get back to the conversation about the Quran in one moment, but I want to play this clip here about some new details that were emerging about the shooter of the 2 NYPD officers and some information about the officers themselves.
Good morning. Let's get right to that breaking news. 2 police officers killed execution style just 5 minutes after the New York City Police Department got a warning from police in Baltimore saying a gunman was on his way to the city to assassinate cops.
Brian Yenes is live in our studio. He's been reporting on this all night and has all the details for us. Brian?
Hey, good morning. You know, just moments after addressing the grieving families of 2 of New York's finest, a visibly emotional and shaken NYPD Police Commissioner Bill Bratton detailed their horrific murders last night. Bratton saying 32-year-old Wee-Jan Liu and 40-year-old Rafael Ramos were sitting in their NYPD patrol car in an intersection in Brooklyn, New York, when this man, 28-year-old Ismael Brinsley, walked up to their car and opened fire with a silver semi-automatic, killing both.
He took a shooting stance on the passenger side and fired his weapon several times through the front passenger window, striking both officers in the head. Officer Liu and Officer Ramos never had the opportunity to draw their weapons. They may never have actually even seen their assailant.
Moments later, Brinsley shot himself in the head at a nearby subway station. Police say earlier that morning, Brinsley shot and seriously wounded his former girlfriend in Baltimore, Maryland, before traveling to Brooklyn. The killer posting images of a semi-automatic weapon and blood-stained pants with anti-police messages, suggesting this was in revenge for the deaths of Michael Brown and Eric Garner, writing, quote, "I'm putting wings on pigs today. They take one of ours. Let's take 2 of theirs. Hashtag shoot the police, hashtag RIP Eric Garner, hashtag RIP Mike Brown." Last night, New York City Mayor Bill de Blasio was asked if these murders would further increase tensions in a city seemingly already divided between pro and anti-cop sentiments.
I think this is a time to think about these families. I don't think it's a time for politics or political analysis. It's a time to think about families that just lost their father, their husband, their son.
Hundreds of police officers gathered outside that hospital to salute the officers, the death sending shockwaves through the NYPD.
They are no longer going to be proactive. They're going to be reactive. You know what that means? They're not going to hurry to the scene of crimes anymore. They're not going to put their pensions and their lives on the line because they don't get backing from their government leaders.
The murders already prompting the NYPD to adopt drastic wartime policing tactics not seen since the 1970s. At least 2 units are being told to respond to every call now, no matter what. Back to you, Tucker, Ainsley, and Clayton.
Wow. All right, thanks, Brian. We appreciate it.
Okay, so in terms of this, obviously this is horrible. I would never, ever condone assassinating police officers. And, you know, there's a lot of people in the community that I speak with. A lot of people use the term pigs to refer to police officers. I would never do that. I actually have a great deal of respect for police officers, peace officers, people who are out there putting their lives on the line trying to do the right thing and prevent crime in their community, investigate crime in their community. You know, one thing from that clip that was just said is that police are going to be more reactive instead of proactive. They're not going to go out and actually try to put themselves in a position of jeopardy or anything. They're just going to react and investigate. I talk about all the time that, first and foremost, police do not have the obligation to protect you, all right? So this, I'm not really concerned about this reaction as far as any kind of difference, because there is no difference. You know, some police officers are out there, you know, and I'm not bashing police officers, and that's not ever what I want to do. This is not what this show is about. That's not what I'm about. I believe in accountability. What does that mean? That means that I am very pro letting people know when people do good things. All right, there are police officers out there doing good things, and when I see it, I talk about it. I show it. I highlight it. I let people know that there are good police officers out there. Like, for example, there was a story not too long ago where the Secret Service tried to tell a local police department to fake a search warrant to get into this person's house who didn't violate any laws. They had no reasonable suspicion. They had nothing that they could force this person to search their home. And the local police department said no to the Secret Service. We're not going to violate the Fourth Amendment rights of this individual. We're not going to fake a search warrant. We're not going to do that. I gave kudos to them, and I give kudos to all police officers who uphold their oath to the Constitution. I respect those who respect the Constitution. I don't have a reverence for police officers in general or the department. That's just another government institution. It's another arm of the federal Leviathan or the state Leviathan, whatever you want to look at. But the people are what make these departments. I fully believe that police officers deserve credit where credit is due. But on the other hand, there are those out there who violate the Constitution. There are those out there who are out there running amok. They're lawless. They break laws. And these are the people that are out there supposed to enforce the law. Now, in terms of these NYPD police officers, my heart goes out to their family. This should have never happened. Honestly, I think this is absolutely horrible. But let's talk about the shooter. The shooter killed himself in a nearby subway system. Not too long after that, the shooting took place. He shot these officers in the head before they could react. From what I understand, according to reports, he walked up to the passenger side of the police vehicle, and before they could respond or react, he shot them both. And there wasn't anything that they could do about it. But as far as this shooter, it's come out now that there's a very strong potential that he was either influenced by ISIS or he was himself a Muslim. And again, one thing that I hear all the time is people are concerned, especially those in government or institutions or organizations, is they're concerned about the political correctness aspect of it. They don't want people to target minorities or Muslims or something along those lines, and I don't either. Their main concern is for they don't want any kind of diversity to be sacrificed. That's the term that's used, and they're concerned that Muslims will get targeted and picked on and things like that. I'm concerned about that too. I don't want that to happen, but there is clearly an extremist side of the Muslim religion. It's not necessarily all Muslim religion. I have no problem with Muslims in general. I think that there are a lot of fine, upstanding Muslims out there. However, there are those in the extremist section of this religion that wish to do harm on Americans, wish to kill people who do not believe what they believe. And this shooter, he posted a quick picture of a quote. It was actually the Quran. And it said something along the lines of to strike terror into the hearts of enemies of Allah. So that right there, it hasn't really been covered on the news. Have you heard this? Has this happened? Is this even an important part of this story? I think it would. I think it would definitely be an important part. If I was investigating this situation, that'd be something that I would want to find out about. If I found it, I was like, oh, okay, well, we need to kind of look down that rabbit hole and see where this leads. Was he part of ISIS? Is this Is he just a lone wolf extremist, similar to what we saw in Australia? This is something that is not just an exterior or peripheral issue. This is part of the issue. Extremist Islam. People like that are trying to hurt people who don't believe in them. They're coming after Americans. They're coming after people who are our allies. And in general, they're just bullies. They are forceful extremists, and they're dangerous. And something that we should not just exclude from the conversation. I think we need to talk about the extremist Muslim threat. These neo-Nazis, honestly, they're Islamo-Nazis. You know, if you don't believe what we believe, we will kill you. And they're targeting all sorts of people. No one's safe. So, all right, I want to move on a little bit here. Let's actually move to another story here. And we'll go ahead and enter into the next segment of the show. We like to call this segment the Mack Attack. All right, this is a segment of the show where I report about outrageous events in the news. If you have something on your mind, give us a call. The number to the show is 619-924-0986. Again, that's 619-924-0986. Or you can email the show at talk@onthemoveshow.com. So I want to talk a little bit about the situation in Cuba. Later on, we're going to move into our public servants gone wild section, where I illustrate and highlight a few cops and public servants who are out there doing wrong, and I want to talk about it. So first things first, I have a clip here of Ted Cruz, Senator Ted Cruz, talking about his thoughts on Cuba. And for those of you who don't know, President Obama basically just made a move here to unilaterally get our relations with Cuba renewed, or in effect basically stop the sanctions that have been going on for like 60-plus years with Cuba. And you may know Ted Cruz, as we were talking about earlier, Ted Cruz is going to speak about this, but he is a Cuban American. He has a background that we should actually give a little bit of weight on this subject. This man is Cuban American. It's important that people that are immigrants or come from immigrant families speak out in terms of immigration, but also in terms of foreign policies. Now, this is one that affects Ted Cruz, and other Cuban Americans are really upset and riled up about this. Here's Ted Cruz on the Cuba relations.
You know, this is yet another manifestation of the failures of the Obama-Clinton-Kerry foreign policy. For 6 years, we followed the pattern of alienating and abandoning our friends and allies, and at the same time coddling up to and appeasing those who are enemies of this country. And it's a consistent pattern. First, it was Russia, then it was Iran, now it's Cuba. This announcement today will be remembered as a tragic mistake. You know, Cuba was struggling. It was gasping for air. It has been relying on Venezuela with oil prices cratering. Venezuela is hurting economically, and just like the administration did with Iran, right when the administration was feeling the maximum pain, it throws them an economic lifeline and continues the brutal repression and dictatorship of the Castro brothers.
Well, you know, Senator, there are a lot of folks who look at it on both sides and say, well, what is 50 years of this wrought?
Well, what it has wrought is limiting the impact and harm of Cuba. There is a difference between countries that are friends, that are our allies, that are our trading partners. In Cuba, the Cuban government controls all of the money that comes in. If you bring money into the country, you have to transfer it into Cuban pesos, which enriches and empowers the dictatorship. It's also 90 miles away. Look, Cuba is an ally of North Korea. It is an ally of Iran. It is an ally of Venezuela. It is an avowed enemy of this country. You know, it was striking, the president's remarks. He talked about the Bay of Pigs invasion, but somehow completely omitted the Cuban Missile Crisis, somehow completely omitted an incredible threat to U.S. national security with nuclear weapons that were almost 90 miles off our shore. And it was sad to see both the president and John Kerry essentially blame America first, blame America for the relation between the United States and Cuba. Look, the Castros are the ones who have decided to be brutal, repressive dictators, and we should not be taking blame for the fact that we responded to their active acts of war and hostility. They are a leading state sponsor of terrorism, and just like President Obama did with Russia, just like President Obama did with Iran, he does not understand the difference between our friends and our enemies.
Okay, so I want to talk about this for a moment here. First and foremost, the comment he made about them being a leading state sponsor of terrorists. This is a topic that has been debated. It's arguably debatable. The evidence there is flimsy at best. There are some stuff out there that you can argue that, yeah, they've been doing this, but then on the other side we'll say, no, they haven't, or what proof do you have? And that is the situation as far as them being a state sponsor of terrorism. However, the DOD classifies them as a state sponsor of terrorism. So he wasn't wrong when he said that, but he is basically just going off of what the DOD says. Anyway, another thing I want to talk about in relation to this is the rift that this has put between Catholics that are Cuban or of Cuban descent, and these Catholics are upset with the way the Pope has come out and spoke about this. Pope Francis, he was actually encouraging the talks between President Obama and Raul Castro, and it has fractured a big portion of the Cuban-American Catholic society. I'm going to read here an article from myway.com, and the author of this is Matt Sedensky, so hat tip my way. And anyway, in the article, they say, many Catholics worldwide have expressed pride in seeing Francis stirring hopes of progress in communist Cuba. But some Cuban Americans say their spiritual leader betrayed them. I'm still Catholic till the day I die, said Efren Rivas, a 53-year-old maintenance man in Miami who was a political prisoner in Cuba for 16 years. And he went on to say, but I'm a Catholic without a pope. So he has basically renounced the pope. And this is a big deal. You know, a lot of people, especially Cuban Americans, are upset about this. They don't think that it's going to lead to any real change. And on the other side of the coin, all right, let me tell you where I stand. Because, first of all, I'm not a fan of sanctions. I don't think that sanctions really work. I don't think that they are the best way to do things. I think that there's a lot of better ways to handle situations and sanctions, especially limited sanctions, as we saw getting imposed little by little on Russia. I don't think most of those will do much. However, you couple that with what's going on right now. What are we seeing right now? The price of crude oil has dropped crazy amounts. It's now, like, last I checked, I think I remember seeing something about it being $50 a barrel, something along those lines. It's gone down significantly. In order for Russia and most of the world to actually make a profit in the oil market, which, by the way, Russia's economy is solely functioning, really basically just on, that's what it is founded on. It is a oil-based economy. So if the oil prices are down, I think they need it to be somewhere between $90 and $110 a barrel for them to really make a profit and not be in a recession. But now that the price of oil has dropped, it's really putting a hurt on most of the world. So the question is with these sanctions and the price of oil on Cuba and the fact that Venezuela is an oil-driven economy too, and they're really hurting right now. They are hurting. Cuba was going to be feeling a whole lot of pain from the sanctions. And right when the sanctions were about to be at their most important part of where they may actually topple this regime. And you got to remember, this is a regime that has taken political prisoners. Everything in the whole market is through the government. The government runs everything. There's no democracy. There's no voice of the people. They don't have a vote. Everything is run by the government. Everything is either state-run or state-sanctioned. Nothing is free. People are being killed. People disappear. It happens all the time. The people that have lived underneath the Castro yoke, the Cuban Americans who have lived to tell the tale, they're here. They're telling us what the regime was like. And those people don't think this is a good idea. I think we should listen to them. Now, again, I'm not a fan of sanctions. I don't think that they work. However, it obviously is going to work in this situation. Now, what we have done is after 60 years of having these sanctions there, to where they really haven't done a whole lot, and we can see there's evidence that the Cuban economy has risen steadily since the sanctions have been imposed, and they've managed to build up an economy. The issue is, though, is that this economy is about to topple over. The house of cards was about to fall down. And what we have proven, what Obama has shown anyone out there that we oppose, especially through sanctions, is that if you just hold on long enough, hold out, eventually we'll give up. Eventually we'll just walk away, and you'll win. That's what Cuba looks at this right now. They have won. They held out long enough, and they won. Now we're kowtowing to a dictator, a communist dictator who is a tyrant, who doesn't believe in rights of people. And what do we get? What do we get in return? Okay, we exchange some hostages. That's great. This president appears to really like the whole hostage exchange thing. And it's awesome that we got these people back. That's great. However, now we have basically put an ease on the Cuban economy. And I want you to think about it for a second. Think about the Cuban economy in and of itself. These people are driving around in cars from the 1950s, not because they think it's cool or you know it's a little niche that they've developed for themselves. These people are driving around in these cars because they can't afford anything else. This place is so poverty-stricken because the government runs everything. The government has control over everything. Now let's talk about trade. If we're talking about trading, making trade with these people, do you really think that they're going to buy anything that we have? The people, not the government, but the people. They can't afford it. They cannot afford to buy American-made products. They can't afford it. It won't happen. So the whole concept, and one main argument from people who say, hey, look what the free market did. Increasing free market will open these countries up to Western ideas and technology, and the West has a pervasive way of getting into the cultures, and will make it more friendly to us. That's the argument. But how will this work? There's no evidence to suggest that this will actually work, or what that actually will do, or how any of that works out. This is a theory. A theory. We know for a fact that they were about to be hurting. The Castro regime was about to be hurting. Possibly would have suffered financial collapse. Maybe the government would have toppled over. Maybe democracy would have been in store for Cubans. But we'll never know, because right when it was about to take effect, right when the sanctions were about to hurt the most, we eased it on them. Just like we did with Iran. Iran was feeling the pain from our sanctions, and we eased them too. This president seems to think that if you make concessions with our enemies, with people who hate us, with people who are just bad actors on the world stage, if we do what they want and we ask them, what can we do to make you guys like us, that it'll fix everything. It's not the case. Some people just want to kill us. Some people don't want us to be alive. How do you do anything to appease that? How do you solve that problem? Well, apparently this president seems to think that you can solve that problem by giving them what they want, by making their lives easier, opening up trade for these people. And no good's going to come from this. The Cuban people are not going to see any benefit out of this. Who will make money off of this? The Castro regime. This is not going to be helpful to the Cuban people. This is going to be hurtful to the Cuban people, because all it's going to do is ensure that their government stays exactly the same and this regime stays in power. That's my take on it anyway. Anyway, guys, we're going to cut to a quick commercial break. When we get back, I want to go into the highlight reel here of some of the police who have done some things that I disagree with, and I want to illustrate it a little bit and put a little spotlight on it. So anyway, we'll be right back after this break. Don't go anywhere.
Oath Keepers is a nonpartisan association of current active duty military, reserve, guard, veterans, peace officers, and firefighters who will fulfill the oath we swore, with the support of like-minded citizens who take an oath to stand with us, to support and defend the Constitution against all enemies, foreign and domestic. So help us God. Join us at oathkeepers.org.
Support On The Move. Help us make this podcast bigger and better. You can do this by going to our store and purchasing one of our hundreds of products. All designs are original and made for patriots like you. Just go to cafepress.com/onthemoveshow. We appreciate your support. Hi, I'm Latasha Worley, and I work with candidates to creatively and effectively communicate their message to voters. I offer professional graphic design services, from yard signs to flyers, from logos to vehicle magnets. Email me today at latashaworley@gmail.com. That's LAGOSHA Worley@gmail.com for a quote on items for your campaign.
Broadcasting from deep within occupied territory on the far left coast. You're listening to On the Move with Mack Worley III. Stand up, speak out, and get on the move. And now your host, Mack Worley III.
And we're back. If you guys have anything on your mind, please feel free to give us a call. The number to the show is 619-924-0986. Again, that's 619-924-0986. I have a comment here from one of our listeners. She wrote, I agree. It's all about oil. Don't forget Cuba is supposedly surrounded by oil, and we're supposed to help Cuba pump it. So, yes, Obama is thinking Cuba will trade with us and boost our failing economy. You know, I want to mention for a second here, we don't have a whole lot of time in the show. We got about 13 minutes left. We're not going to be able to get to nearly half of the stories I have for you to highlight, unfortunately. But oil is at such a reduced price, and we've been told this whole time that increasing production of oil will not lower the price of gas at our pumps, which is not true. You know, we've been told that's not the way the market works. That's not the way oil speculation prices work. However, that is the first rule of economics, is supply and demand. When you increase the supply of something, you lower the price. That is what happens. So obviously there's more at play here, but the decreased oil price is OPEC's way of basically jabbing at our natural gas economy. It takes a lot of resources and money to actually produce natural gas through fracking, which North Dakota and Texas have been doing tremendously at that. They have increased our output of natural gas, and we have become a global producer of energy. And OPEC now has lowered the price of oil as a result. So they're increasing production. We have seen this, and now we know that everything they told us before was a lie. And you know what? I don't even care about Cuban oil. Let's get away from other people's oil. Let's be a little more independent. Okay, you know, if they want to lower the price, we'll find something to do with that oil, but we don't need to help Cuba to get oil. Oil is at an all-time, well, not an all-time low, but at a low comparatively speaking for the last few years. Geez, I mean, have you looked at the price for gas lately? It has gone down so much to the point where I'm actually happy at gas being under $3 a gallon, which is crazy. $3 a gallon in 2008, I would have been offended. But now suddenly I'm okay with it because of how bad things have been. So let's keep producing our own natural gas. Let's become a power. Let's actually, do something for our economy. Let's not be reliant on Cuba or Russia or the Saudis, who all these people are human rights violators. All these people, you want to get in bed with somebody, let's get in bed with North Dakota. Let's get in bed with Texas. Let's not get in bed with Cuba. Let's not get in bed with Russia. And certainly we don't need to maintain a relationship with people like the Saudis, who are out there stoning homosexuals to death and executing public dissenters. I mean, this is a issue. We are getting in bed with people and making relations with governments who do not hold the same values as us and are horrible human rights violators. Anyway, let's move on here. I want to cover another segment here. This is the Public Servants Gone Wild. I want to play a clip here from this gentleman. His name is Chad Chadwick, and he was the victim of a SWAT assault gone wrong. I will play the clip for you guys, and you can hear it for yourself.
And now for a Fox 26 exclusive. We are reporting tonight troubling allegations of police and prosecutorial misconduct in Fort Bend County. Fox 26's Greg Grugan is here with what's really a disturbing story, Greg.
That's right, Don. Those charges come from an innocent man who says he's been devastated emotionally, physically, and financially by cops he believes abused their power and then, with the aid of prosecutors, attempted to cover their tracks.
These cops are out of control. They are ruining good people's lives. I'm a good man. I've done everything I can to show that as a father, as a citizen, as a worker.
And Chad Chadwick has the spotless record to fully back that claim. But on the night of September 27th, 2011, it did him no good at all. It started when a friend concerned for Chadwick's emotional well-being called Missouri City Police to Chad's Sienna apartment, where he'd been distraught, drinking, and unknown to anyone, had gone to sleep in the bathtub. A SWAT team was summoned.
They told the judge I had hostages. They lied to a judge and told him I had hostages in my apartment, therefore they need to enter.
Chadwick owned a single shotgun, and while he had threatened no one, not even himself, SWAT kicked in his door, launched a stun grenade into the bathroom, and stormed in, according to Chadwick, without announcing their identity.
So while I had my hands up naked in the shower, they shot me with a 40-millimeter non-lethal round.
Followed by a second stun grenade.
I turned away. The explosion went off. I opened my eyes. The lights are out, and here comes a shield with 4 or 5 guys behind it. Pinned me against the wall and proceeded to beat the crap out of me.
That's when officers shot the unarmed Chadwick in the back of the head with a taser at point-blank range.
But they claimed that I drew down with a shampoo bottle, an Axe body wash bottle.
And it wasn't over.
They grabbed me by the one arm that was out of the shower and then grabbed me by my testicles and pulled me out, slammed me on my face on the floor, and proceeded to beat me more.
Chad Chadwick, who hadn't broken a single law when SWAT burst through his door, was taken to the Fort Bend County Jail with a fractured nose, bruised ribs, and what's proven to be permanent hearing loss. He was held in an isolation cell for 2 full days.
Instead of them apologizing to this man and saying, let us see what we can do to help you make you whole again, they concocted criminal charges against him.
One
after another.
Fort Bend County District Attorney John Healy sought to indict Chadwick on 2 felony counts of assaulting a police officer, but a grand jury said no law was broken. It could have stopped there, but Healy's prosecutors tried misdemeanor charges of resisting arrest, calling more than a dozen officers to testify. But again, the charges were dropped. A month ago, 3 years after the SWAT raid, a jury found Chad Chadwick not guilty of interfering with police.
They tried to make me a convict, and I did. It broke me. It financially bankrupted me. I used my life savings. Not to mention I lost my kids.
This type of police abuse and excessive use of force and concoction of criminal charges against innocent people is not just happening to black people. It's happening to white people, too.
For Chadwick, some of the damage will never be repaired.
And all I could think about was, what are my daughters going to think? My goal in life is to be a father that my kids are proud of. That's it.
All right, so that was the story of Chadwick, and I have a couple minutes left in the show here. I'm going to play one more clip. This is a police officer that was confronted about littering on the highway. So citizens followed him, and then when he pulled over at a I think it was a grocery store, they started recording the conversation with him, and this is what happened. I'm not going to be able to play the whole clip, but I'm going to play highlights from it. Here we go.
Don't film me where they can just like...
Nah, I'm not.
I'm worried about you because you would pull over and write a ticket on what I would do.
Okay, so right now, the citizen just said, hey, you guys were... I saw you guys throw a candy wrapper out the passenger side there, and the police officer, he says, the citizen says, I'm concerned about you because I know if you saw somebody do the same thing, you would write somebody a ticket or pull somebody over. The police officer responds, how would you know what I would do?
It's against the law, and you are there to uphold the law. It's against the law to do this, sir. Huh? We've already called dispatch and talked to the chief. I know it don't matter. What you talking to me about it for if you already called? Because out of respect. Called, then don't talk to me. Well, I'm just saying, sir, it ain't right. Okay. Well, that's all we wanted you to do. Is that's not right, man. I'll take care. That's not right. Appreciate it. Well, how about? But I mean, somebody shouldn't have to say something to you for you to take care of it. Well, it don't matter to me. What's going to happen? I guess ain't nothing going to happen because y'all think y'all above the law. So what you talking about? Are you above the law? You running 65 and 45. Did I stop you? No, I wasn't. Yes, you was. I was running with you. Yes, you was. I was running with you. Well, you running 65 and 45, right? So were you. You're not on call. You going to come to the grocery store. Let me tell you what you do. You pull this vehicle off and get out of my face. That's what you do. It's a public property, sir. That's what you do. I'm talking to you. Are you driving? You break the law. Are you driving? I don't have to be driving to have my opinion. I got rights just like he does, Bubba. It don't matter. I'm flexing them right now. Go do something about it. I'm flexing my rights right now. Go do something about it. I'm trying to. Okay, that's not right, man. You ain't trying to do nothing about it. That's not right for her to be throwing trash. Why you still talking?
All right, so anyway, this may seem like a small deal, and in the grand scheme of things, it is a small deal. But let's talk about the attitude from the police officer. We only got a couple minutes left in the show, but we're going to try to analyze this for a second here. A concerned citizen says, hey, I saw you guys litter. You're supposed to be the people that enforce these laws. If you saw a citizen doing the same thing, you would arrest them and give them a ticket, or at least pull them over, not necessarily arrest them, but at least give them a ticket. So the police officer immediately gets defensive, and he's, hey, get off my back. What business is it of yours? I'm a police officer. You're not a police officer. But in fact, these two individuals in the car actually have law enforcement experience. So both of these individuals in the vehicle are concerned. They're concerned that somebody who's sworn to uphold these laws are out there violating the very laws that they would get somebody in trouble for if they saw violating themselves. So, and it goes on to the topic too of how police officers can write tickets for talking on the cell phone, to somebody. So you get pulled over for talking on a cell phone, you get a ticket. But police, they get these special little exemptions and things like that to where they can talk on their cell phone. In fact, and any of you that know my story about my unlawful arrest would know that the police officer who arrested me, and I'm riding in his cruiser, he's on the phone while he's driving me. He's on the phone. I found out after the fact that it was totally legal for him to do that. Is that right, though? What kind of hypocrite do you have to be talking on the phone, doing all these different things, and then pull somebody over for doing the same exact thing? Our public officials, they don't get special rights. They don't get special privileges. In fact, they get less because they serve us. Public officials, public servants, they don't get special rights. In what world does somebody who's serving you have more rights than you do? Up is down, black is white. Things are not the way they should be. and it's concerning. It's very. I'm concerned. I'm sure you guys are too. Anyway, that's the show for today. I really appreciate you guys tuning in. If you got this far in the podcast, please share it around. Talk about it with your friends and family. Help spread the message of liberty. I want to thank you guys, each and every one of you, members of the Mack Pack, for tuning in week after week. We appreciate your continued support. Also want to thank Jules Czudar for joining us today as a guest. I really enjoyed that interview. Don't forget to tune in next week. We broadcast every Sunday at blogtalkradio.com/OnTheMoveShow at 5 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, so don't miss an episode. Don't forget to check us out at OnTheMoveShow OnTheMoveShow.com, here at blogtalkradio.com/OnTheMoveShow, Facebook.com/OnTheMoveShow, YouTube.com/OnTheMoveShow, and Twitter.com/OnTheMoveShow. And as always, know your rights, assert your rights, and get on the move.